I'll say this. I think that people should experience, just for trying purposes, the new site editor. So you have to use a block-based theme for that. And then you can experience the site editor. It's a lot like SquareSpace. And when I go in there, I'm like, this is what WordPress is going to be in a couple years. The interface, the experience. So that's all that it's going to be. It's not going to be you go there and it says posts and pages and tools. It's going to have the UI of the site editor. And that is speculation, but I would bet that it's pretty accurate speculation. So that there's like a new, fresh, easier to navigate experience inside of WordPress. That's certainly coming.
Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Welcome, friends, into episode 264. Now, if you have ever Googled just about anything on WordPress or WordPress themes or WordPress plugins, it's very likely that you've come across my guest in this episode, Adam Preiser, and his brand is called WP Crafter. The reason I think that's probable is because Adam has, if it's not the largest YouTube channel on WordPress, it's one of the largest with his brand WP Crafter, which is WordPress for non-techies. Adam right now on his YouTube channel is closing in on 250,000 subscribers and well over 21 million views. So I'm guessing you've heard of my guest in this episode if you are in the WordPress realm. And I'm so excited to have Adam back onto the podcast because Adam, being that he has such a successful YouTube channel, he's also the owner of a lot of top-notch WordPress plugins, including SureCart, SureTriggers, SureWriter, which is one that's coming out, Presto Player, Cart Flows, a lot of these tools that if you're in WordPress, you're familiar with. So he is very in the know and what's going on. And I wanted to take some time to just catch up with Adam and just talk shop, talk about WordPress, where it is right now and the industry side of things. We also dive into Divi and Elementor and other platforms and theme builders, how they're stacking up and maybe what the future looks like. That's kind of one reason I love talking with Adam is because he has such a pulse on what's going on in the market. I was really, really interested to hear where he thinks things are and where things are going with the rise of other builders and other platforms like Squarespace, Webflow, etc. So we talk about all that and a lot more. What a blast of a conversation. Thanks again for Adam for coming back onto the show and being transparent. You can connect with him after this at his website, wpcrafter.com. And if you have not yet subscribed to his YouTube channel, let's get him over 250,000, shall we? Just go to wpcrafter.com or just search WP Crafter on YouTube and you'll find him. I'll follow up at the end of this episode with some links on where to go next. But for right now, here's Adam. And I hope you enjoy our little roundtable type conversation about WordPress, where things are at, where things are headed, and oh so much more. Adam, man, so good to chat with you again. Good to reconnect. Second time on the podcast. So thanks again for coming on, man.
I think you're wrong. I think this might be the third time, actually.
We did,
or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, we chatted separately about something, but you are your first official podcast. Yeah, there was a one official podcast, but we have chatted a couple times.
Okay, that's funny. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm the one that can't keep track. Then
Didn't we just talk before we went live? I'm the one with young kids here, Adam. I mean, my brain should be the one that's mush.
Exactly. Well, thanks for having me on a second time.
Yeah, man. Well, I was trying to look at what episode you were on the first time. So you were on back in 134. We talked about content creation and we talked a lot about YouTube. For those who don't know you, actually, let me turn it over to you, Adam. For those who don't know you or in my audience, who is Adam and what do you do? What are you known for?
Sure. So my name is Adam. I'm actually mostly known and recognized through my YouTube channel that has traditionally been revolving around WordPress. So, for example, I just put a video up last month, and it was about this new WordPress update, and 113,000 people watched it in the last month. So, and I think that I have a bald head. If you're watching, not listening, if you're listening and not watching, I have a bald head. So I'm also known as that bald guy on YouTube, which, hey, I can embrace the baldness.
You know what? In a few years, there's going to be 2 bald guys on YouTube doing WordPress tutorials. So I'll catch up there with you.
Exactly. I've embraced it. I've totally embraced the baldness. Actually, is it okay to go on a quick tangent? Okay. Someone had sent me a video. Yeah. Oh, you can always cut it out. So, okay. Someone sent me a video when I was in college. We had gone on this hiking trip down to the Grand Canyon, and it's no joke. And I'm watching the video, and this was like 30 years ago or something like that. No, 25 years ago. I don't know. I'm watching it with my wife and my son, and I'm like, where am I? And they saw me, but I couldn't recognize myself. I had hair, I had facial hair, I had all of this stuff, and I didn't even recognize myself. Anyways, but
well, I feel like, Adam, it's one look that's like really trendy is the bald head with the big beard. So, I mean, I feel like the opportunity is ready for you now,
Yes, I know the beard, like maybe I will try that. But I'm married. I don't know how much my wife would like the beard going on.
Yeah.
It's like itchy.
Yeah.
Anyways, most people know me by the YouTube channel, but over the past couple of years, I've got into the product business. And so there's a bunch of products. My face is typically associated with the products because people recognize me from the YouTube channel. The products have a life of their own, of course.
So your YouTube channel, WP Crafter, closes in on 250,000 subscribers. Congrats, by the way. That's awesome, man.
Thank you.
Over 21 million views. I mean, the one thing I've appreciated about you since I've known you, which is years now, is you have stayed consistent. And despite being a product creator, which typically what I've seen happens to a lot of product creators is that's it. Like they become a product creator, and then unless it's a marketing strategy, that's kind of all they do. But I love that you've stayed active. And you mentioned that recent video you did about the WordPress update. Sorry, I just played your video. That is what actually prompted me to connect with you, because I was like, there's so much that's going on right now. It's tough for me sometimes to keep track of everything. And so instead of just doing all the research and following every blog I can on WordPress, I tend to just talk with folks who are in the know. So I say that to say, like, Adam, thank you for being here, because I wanted to pick your brain on what the heck's going on, particularly with WordPress, because there's a lot's going on right now, man. I mean, I don't know if WordPress is losing popularity, but and this may just be the way of how my podcast has brought me into just the wider web design community, because I have so many students now who are using Squarespace and Showit and Webflow and other builders. But what's your thoughts on where WordPress is right now, good or bad?
Got it. Well, thanks for pointing to my channel and the videos I make as a resource of staying up to date. I actually hear that from other podcasters, video creators that are not like focused around WordPress when they want to stay in the loop. They just watch my videos to stay in the loop. So,
side note, I'm glad you're here, because I don't like doing like the up-to-date type of videos. And I thought years ago, I was like, I might do like latest news of WordPress, but I'm like, I don't want to be the next Adam. I'd rather just have you do that, like I want to do what I do and you do what you do. So, yeah.
But that's actually like not a good strategy to do that anyway, right? Because it's like your content has an expiration date, right?
Yes.
So
exactly. And then, you don't want to be like the news guy, but you're so much more than that with WP Crafter. So.
Exactly. So, a lot of things are changing just with technology. I think if you take a couple steps back, things are changing at such a rapid pace across the board. Obviously, this is a podcast where people are agencies and designers and things like that. I don't necessarily think WordPress itself is going backwards in popularity, usage, or adoption. I think what is happening, and this is happening in every business, every industry, is technology is changing, but we're coming out of the COVID pandemic era, where businesses such as WordPress and all like the different, anything related online had 2 or 3 years of growth in like 18 months. And so after the 18 months, right? So in early 2022, people are going back to work. Those businesses, those aspirational businesses are now closed. So it's like a flat line of growth. But the flat line of growth is not because something's not growing. It's just that it received 2 to 3 years of growth in a very short period of time. And I know this from both sides of it, right? Or lots of different angles. For example, people's interest in watching YouTube videos about WordPress, like say the videos I make, that has waned off. But everyone that was there when the pandemic happened saw such explosive growth. It's like you were at the right place at the right time. So there's not much to complain about the way that I see it. And also on the product side, there was this explosive growth. You would have, say hypothetically you had 100,000 in sales on a normal year. You're now having 400,000 in sales out of nowhere. So it tapers off. So that's, I think, what's really going on. There's a lot of things changing for sure. There's changes, and we could get into the things that are changing. But I think that's what's happening with lots of businesses. And I'm sure many of the listeners of this podcast might be experiencing some of that. Maybe not. I would think so.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a really interesting insight and take on that, Adam. I think you're right that there was such, and this is just is online business in general. There was such a flood in 2020 of people going online, particularly business owners who may have had a site or didn't have a site. They thought about it. Well, when your doors are closed to people and you need to get online, there was such interest. There was such a flood. Quite frankly, there was just so many people who didn't have anything else to do. So for a lot of people who were like, yeah, I've always thought about doing web design. I can't go to work right now. Yeah, maybe I'll search YouTube on how to do web design. They see your tutorials. They see some of my courses. And for folks, I think in our situations, we did see a huge rise. Anyone as an online business, a lot of my web design students, their businesses exploded in 2020. But you're right. There is a bit of a downturn now, but I didn't think about it like this, but I think you're right. It's not like things are worse than they were before 2020. It's just leveled off compared to the things were maybe in 2020 and 2021 because there was such interest online. And maybe there's also just a flood of designers and people and products and options now that maybe we're just seeing a bit of that too. Like there does seem to be a lot more noise, particularly in the web design world now than there was, let's say, in 2019. That's the way I experience it for sure.
Yeah, and we're also entering probably the most transformative years of our lives when it comes to technology, with artificial intelligence becoming such a big thing in the last 6 months. It's actually been here a while, but everyone knows about it now after the last 6 months, but it's getting plugged into everything. So the way we do things now is rapidly changing. Did I just shift gears?
No, I love that. I knew we were going to talk about AI, particularly in the world of web design, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's so many technologies that I think you're right. Maybe we're a little bit under the radar, but are now maybe more exposed in some ways. I've even seen, AI in particular is across everything, but I've seen so many changes in the landscape with design, with tools like Canva, which I'm using Canva left and right now. I'm still a Divi guy through and through, and I still love WordPress. But I have seen a lot of my students go different routes, which has been really interesting, whether they stay in WordPress or whether they go to a whole different platform. It just seems like there's a flood of choices now. And I think that the challenge that most of the people I interact with, it's just a matter of choosing like what works for you. I don't know. Do you have any insights on that in a world where there's just so many options now? Would you agree that one of the hardest things is to just figure out what works for you and choose it?
Well, isn't that like the case with many things in life? Like there's lots of great options. Which one are we going to choose? And then you want to stay with it and not always think the grass is greener on the other side. The reality is, when it comes to, say, building a website, all the tools lead to the same end result, which is a website. So I like that there's lots of options. it does make things, there's obviously clear, better choices. How about that? So if you have 100 options, there's always going to be like 4 or 5 market leaders that you might want to choose. So I think like with WordPress, like the problem is there's like you could use the word fragmentation, but there's like all of these different paths someone would go to make a website now, right? There, you use Divi. You could use Elementor as another option. There's just the WordPress block editor, which is an option. And then there's like all these like little micro things like Oxygen and Breakdance and Bricks. And there's a new one, like it's hard to keep up. It's very hard to keep up. With all of them. And that's just on WordPress, right? And then outside of WordPress, if you don't want to deal with some of the perceived issues you might run into with WordPress, there's, Webflow's probably the one everyone's trying to catch. But then
that
there's
seems to be the hot one. Yeah, that's the one that I hear most about. Yeah.
I'm sure, especially with Your Circle, right? Because it's an excellent design tool. I bet you Adobe will acquire them at some point, right? Adobe buys everybody eventually. So I'm sure Adobe's going to probably buy them in a couple of years, if not negotiating right now.
Why do you think that? Do they have a connection there? I don't know the ownership of Webflow or anything.
Adobe buys anything that designers are using so that they could own the design space. So they just bought Figma. In Figma, they don't pay a little bit of money. They pay premium prices for everything they buy. It's a publicly traded company. They've got billions at their fingertips. So they just bought Figma. And I'm sure many people in that are in your circles use Figma.
Yeah, it's huge for mock-ups and wireframing and stuff and design. Yeah.
I'm in Figma every single day, and I'm not even a designer. It's because the designers are saying, here's the Figma. They're not saying here's the Figma, but here's the link to see the design and leave comments on it. So I'm in Figma every single day. That's why I think Webflow for sure is going to be purchased by Adobe at some point, because they want to design the entire ecosystem, the entire thing. They're going to end up owning it, and they've got the money to buy it. But Webflow is a great option as well. There's like all of these different options, and but you end up with the same thing with all of them. At the end of the day, you end up with a website.
What's made you stick with WordPress? Have you ever considered, or have you ever tried branching out to different builders and platforms?
I'm not like an absolutist when it comes to like this concept of self-hosting. You have it, you're in control of it. I'm not like an absolutist with that kind of a concept, but I do like it. I do like the fact that I can go and get my own like Cloudways or DigitalOcean server or traditional hosting account, and I can click a button and have my website there, and I have control and access to everything. And I don't necessarily have to pay an exorbitant, what I would consider exorbitant. It's so funny. I mentioned how like the pandemic, everything blew up, right? Obviously, if you were like me on YouTube, or also like me and you had products, you did really good those years. So like my personal financial situation from 2019 to where it is today is vastly different, but I'm still the same guy. And I am still like price conscious is what I'm trying to get at, right? Like if you look at like Webflow, they just had they've had multiple price increases, right? And you are really vulnerable to that. There's no such thing as grandfathering. When you're using it, you're at their mercy.
And to that note, I do think that's an interesting point there, because you have kept your teams, it seems like, very lean and mean from what I gather. But on the flip side of that, a lot of companies went on hiring frenzies to keep up with the demand. Like I've heard left and right. I actually just met up with Matt Gartland, who's the CEO of Smart Passive Income, with Pat Flynn. He lives here in Columbus, and we get together every once in a while. And he was saying SPI, Smart Passive Income, has stayed pretty lean, but a lot of similar, either it's online brands or particularly agencies, had to scale and hire at such a feverish pace to keep pace that now layoffs are wild. I mean, I know like Google's laid off a ton of people. Every company is laying off people left and right now. And I think to that reason of why that might be the case is probably like what you articulated, Adam. There's just the drop after the past couple of years of interest and everything going on. So I say that to say, like, a lot of people who maybe the revenue was so big in 2020 and 2021, now it's probably a very different outlook for a lot of people.
It's returning back to like probably 2019 levels, or just like a moderate growth of 2019. So that is absolutely happening. But there's actually with that, there's another aspect to it. If you were hiring during the phase where it was hard to hire people because there was so much competition, you're paying more for the same people. And I don't mean this in a heartless way. You know, I really care about people. Right now, you can get tech talent at a discount from where you could have 12 months ago. 12 months ago, you're paying a premium. There was that concept called the Great Resignation. That's where people were leaving their companies to get a better paying jobs someplace else. Now those options are not on the table.
Gotcha.
So now it's like if you were paying someone, say, $5,000 a month, but you could get someone for $2,500 a month that's maybe more hungry, you might want to make that change if you're trying to stay afloat, and be more profitable. But that's certainly something that's going on, and it's rough. But I mean, this is the way that life works.
And to that point of, we kind of got away from the topic of WordPress in particular. No, it's, look, if anyone doesn't know you or me now, get it, buckle up, because there's going to be some tangents. But I am kind of curious about WordPress compared to some of these other builders who, from what I see, and I am not one to look at a bunch of news articles or stats. I should probably do better at that. Or, I just tune into you and some others who seem to be up on the up and up on this. But it does seem like from my perspective that WordPress is a bit still like plateaued a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Is that kind of what you're feeling?
I think everybody's plateaued. And I think WordPress has plateaued along with it. I think once everything fully settles out in the next year or two with everything that happened with COVID, and it's not just like the WordPress thing, it's every aspect of life. I think we'll get back to those normal, smaller growth marks, like 10% growth and things like that. But I would say, though, to your point regarding WordPress, there was no way that it was going to continue its growth that it's had over the last 10 years. There's just no way that was going to, there would be able to continue that growth level. I think what the estimates now are like at 40, was it like 41 or 43% more?
You probably just saw my screen flash because I literally just looked it up. Now this is one thing I wanted to ask you. I'm glad we're talking about this now. Where do you go, Adam, to look at true stats? Because
there's no such thing.
Okay.
There's no such thing.
Okay. That makes me feel better because people ask me that and I'm like, I don't know. But the thing is, their WP Engine is one of the top choices, but then they say that WordPress is 63%. Or all websites of those who content management system. So of all content management systems, it's 63%. But yeah, the last I heard on, I forget what site it is. I thought it was like 44. Here we go. WordPress market share still going strong in 2023, 43.1%. So W3 Tech, W3Text.com seems to be one of the prominent sources, and that's saying 43.
Actually, the real number is probably higher. So what that is, it's not adding up every website on the internet and checking if it has WordPress. They're just taking the most highly trafficked websites. So gotcha. I think it might be like the top 1 million websites in terms of traffic, and that's when they're deriving it. But you would logically think that WordPress, there's way more WordPress websites that don't get a lot of traffic because it's just a local small business, right? Like it's not even a blip. If 500 people a week go and visit the site, it's great for the business. You know, it's not vindicative of its effectiveness. It's just, it will never register on that. And those guys are using WordPress probably, I would think, over the Wixes and things like that.
Yeah,
Actually,
I don't know.
You're right. Maybe not.
Yeah, that might
You're
be
right.
It might be a 50-50 because I still, from what I've seen, WordPress is still very tricky for DIYers. I think WordPress is, especially now, a little more ideal for those who have a freelance web designer or a webmaster in their sphere. The true DIY business owner is often using, I mean, it's probably 50-50. Like one of my friends, Wes McNeil, who's also a YouTuber, he helps DIY businesses, and it's with WordPress and Elementor. So it's more about Elementor than it is about WordPress necessarily as far as the marketing. So I think there is a lot of that. But yeah, I would say probably just from what I know, it's probably 50-50 between WordPress and then Squarespace or Wix or a true like DIY. Anyone with barely any tech experience could do it, which kind of makes me think about WordPress, because I feel like even the number 43%, let's say the top 100 million sites or whatever it is, so 43%, that's still not very different from 5 years ago, maybe, to where it was probably the low 40s. Like you would think there would be a much bigger trajectory if WordPress was, you know, really, really ramping up. And maybe that's just due to so many other options now. I personally think that WordPress took a bit of a divisive turn when Gutenberg came into the picture. I still don't like it. I just don't like Gutenberg. I tried. I want to like it. I've even watched some of your tutorials, Adam, with how to use it, and I just don't like it. I don't find it intuitive. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I'm like 36 now. Maybe I'm like, I only use what I know. But I don't know.
That's actually a thing, by the way. You know, when you start getting to a certain age, it's like, oh, I have a different remote control for the television, and I feel like all out of whack. My whole world just got flipped upside down. I got a new mobile phone.
I'm sure I sounded like 68 when I tried Gutenberg, and I'm like, where's the dang publish button?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I understand it. It's been, unfortunately, like a real polarizing thing. And plus, like the WordPress user interface itself, like when you log into the site, that needs some love. It certainly needs some love. There's lots of indications of what the future is going to be like, but even that is like a divisive thing as well. I personally think that because WordPress didn't solve this problem sooner, they kind of created a problem for themselves, right? Where, because think about it, like Elementor was what, like, well, Divi was first, and then there was Elementor. It's really something that WordPress should have done before both of them, and then we wouldn't have this problem. Yeah, making building easier. You know what I mean? Making building easier. And I don't think so. There's the whole challenging concept of open source and what that like really means. Like, there's not a lot of open source projects that are really as big as WordPress, right? Like really, what is there? You know. I think it's really just like
nothing like WordPress. I mean, yeah, it's nothing. You know, almost half the internet, and it's to think about it being a free software that you could just manipulate and utilize and make it your own. It is incredible. It's one reason I've stuck with WordPress, and I still love WordPress. And even though I'm not a fan of Gutenberg, I don't, like I'm not against Matt Mullenweg and what the team is doing. Like I know their heart is very community empowered and centered. And let's be honest, that's a big thing that separates WordPress from every other technology company, is there is such a community behind it still. Like I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. So for everyone who hears this all the time, I'm sorry, but I got to say it again. I don't know what the community is like behind Wix. Are there like Wix meetups where people go and have Wix, like conferences? Are there Squarespace spaces that people go hang out? I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's a community like there is for WordPress.
There, of course, there's absolutely none. That's a very unique attribute to WordPress. But I think like with the concept of open source, the problem is most of the people in an open source project are either funded by a company or, gosh, I don't want to get like political. I'm not like, if I wouldn't be getting political, like from like what you typically think when you hear the word, but like you can't avoid it. Okay, I'll give you my example.
Let's go, Adam. Let's go. At WP Crafter Conspiracies, the new playlist for your channel.
So, like, think of Webflow as China. China, you got one guy calling all the shots, and he can do whatever the heck he wants to do, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says. He's going to do what he wants to do to improve their situation. Then you can think of maybe WordPress as like the United States, where nothing gets done because there's lots of opposing views. And those opposing views, there's not like a dictatorship, right? So like the community's actually your strength and your weakness at that point. So how's that for not being like, I'm not trying to be like political, but like it's the same exact thing.
Though. That's a great analogy. It reminds me like how often, and everyone who's worked with a nonprofit knows this experience where you build a website, right? For a nonprofit, you go to the board meeting and there's 8 people who all have equal say in what happens. Guess what? Nothing happens. Nothing moves forward. Nobody can agree. And you're like, why, number one, did I get called into this meeting? Number two, you guys need to have some sort of like, you need to have a contact person for me who's going to move forward. And number three, there needs to be some hierarchy in place. Like somebody at the end of the day has to say go or no go. That is the reality of like getting shit done, basically.
Yeah, there needs to be someone with a vision for where this driving the ship, someone controlling the rudder of where this thing's going, and have the ability to say, this is what we're doing, full stop. And we don't have that with WordPress. And that's why I think WordPress did the block editor too late. And I think even in doing it, it's like, how many years have you been working on this thing? You know what I mean? Yeah. I could have done this thing in a year. It's been like 5 years. That's
the tricky thing too. It's like Divi, you mentioned, so Divi is my preferred theme and builder. They have been crafting and innovating Divi since 2012, 11 maybe. So when it first, like very, very first came out on the scene. So they have over a decade of innovating this tool. So there's no way that WordPress in a couple years could come out with something that would rival the builder of Divi as far as functionality and everything they've learned, which is why I found the Gutenberg and the builder to be very like burnt, like, you know, like I just did not enjoy it whatsoever. So you're right though. It's like, I do, you know, I don't know if they felt they needed to catch up to that, just to make it more user friendly or to alleviate the need for other builders. But it does seem like WordPress is stuck in a bit of a hard place when it comes to Gutenberg, at least, because I'm always going to use the classic editor and just Divi until something truly better comes along. That's what I'm going to use. And you mentioned this. I don't really know too much about the hierarchy or where Matt Mullenweg is, the CEO of Automatic with WordPress, because they own WordPress. Like, I don't know. Do you know, like, who is Matt the decision maker, or is there? I don't know. I don't know too much. Yeah. I know you had him on your channel a few years back, I think it was. But yeah, what's the hierarchy for WordPress, I guess, as far as the decision makers, or is there none?
Well, I mean, it's an open source project. There's like a committee and stuff like that, but it's not like, you know, it's so technically he calls the shots technically, but then technically he doesn't call the shots. It's kind of weird. Like, I know that makes no sense because WordPress, the open source project, is separate from Automatic and WordPress.com. They're like separate things, but most of the human resources that go into actually building and improving WordPress are full-time employees of Automatic. So there's this, but there's no like, so like everyone building the open source project, most of them are either volunteers or being paid by Automatic to work there and to do that. But it's not run like a business where so for example, the way product development works, I've learned a ton about product development processes, like how you should and how you shouldn't develop a product, as far as structure, ideas, who's calling the shots, like how the whole thing works. You don't just say, oh, I've got this idea, and then you do it. Like there's a process for it. So, for example, in my product companies, we use something called the Agile Development Framework. Anyone can Google that. And you have roles, and there's the guy at the top, not like the top, like there's something special about the guy. That's not what I mean. But there's someone with the role of product owner, and what their job is to be the visionary of the product, to know what's going on with competitors or in the niche, come up with the ideas of what gets done. And then there's like a system of that flowing to the developers to actually execute on it. So there's this system. I feel like WordPress doesn't have a product owner. You know what I mean?
What's the org chart, right? Like, yes. Who's the CEO? Who does this? Who's getting it out? Who's the project manager? Yeah, it does seem like it could be very interchangeable at the least if it's a lot of nonprofit or if it's a lot of volunteer. I mean, which is like, it's so cool. That's amazing that people can contribute, but at the same time, yeah, it's kind of like having 8 cooks in the kitchen. It's probably gonna
nothing gets done,
right? Yeah.
So like in my product companies, I tend to be the product owner role. You know what I mean? Where I'm the one saying, this is what we should do. This is how we should do it. I don't know how to do it, but I know how it should be done. You know what I mean? I know how it should work from a user, like voice of the user. I kind of feel like WordPress doesn't have a voice of the user. That's the role of the product owner, to be the role of the voice of the user. They don't have a voice of the user, or that voice of the user has no power to change a darn thing. You know, so for example, if I'm using one of my products, I'll get fired up, right? I'll be like, oh, this makes no sense. And then I get all like excited, and I'm like saying, we got to fix this. We got to change this. And it gets fixed and changed, and it gets put out. I don't think there's that person that says, oh my gosh, Gutenberg, there's no like mobile responsive controls. What's going on? This is ridiculous. Let's get this fixed right now. Let's put all of our, effort on this. I don't think that occurs. Because
with like SureCart, you don't have a board where you like need to run something by and have a committee vote and approval and then go through a process. Like you have your team and you say, hey, we need to address this. Let's go. And I like, that is the beautiful thing about being lean, mean, small, and agile when it comes to a product, I'm sure, is I honestly don't know how you could have any sort of SaaS product without a very, very clear hierarchy of decision-making and, like with any sort of software, you got to be able to go quick, as you well know. I mean, how many products are you managing now?
Well, we've got lots of things that are not even released. So we do have SureCart, and that's rapidly, we're a very agile team. So we're moving and shaking. Like we're about to have like WooCommerce importers, so you can easily move from WooCommerce to it. That's a big effort. We've got Sure Triggers, which is an automation platform that's like Zapier, but it also caters to WordPress people. It's amazing what that thing can do. We have Sure Writer. It's about to be released. I don't know if you've heard of Jasper. It's like an AI writing tool.
Yeah.
Imagine if Jasper didn't cost you any money and you could put your own open AI key in. We actually built that.
Gotcha.
You could pay a little bit of money if you want like a team account, but if it's just the individual and you want to use AI, so we got that. We've got something really exciting. I can't reveal the name, but it's an entire AI-driven website building platform. And it's also going to be free. You just go in there, you pop in some data that we asked you, and out is a fully ready to go website to design, custom images, as well as custom words. So you might, it's like get you 90% of the way there. It's totally launchable 90% of the way there. There's that. There's Presto Player. There's a couple other things. Cart flows. I can't forget cart flows.
Yeah, that's what I knew. That was the first product that I knew you buy was cart flows.
We have this brand new user interface that's going to be the most beautiful UI you've ever seen in a WordPress product. We'll have that out next month. We've been working on it for 6 months. That's why I've been in Figma all the time.
How the heck are you doing all this, Adam? how do you manage all this? Like, are you literally just,
I'm the product owner. I'm the product
so,
owner. So I can just set the vision, communicate the vision, and then it's really just monitor it. But then there's components for doing everything, right? So like QA. I don't QA the product. We have QA teams. But before we release it, it gets sent to me to accept it or not.
Gotcha.
So it really boils down to a meeting every 2 weeks. So with cart flows, my only real involvement is a meeting every 2 weeks, but then I'm paying attention to what's going on. I'm coming up with the ideas, but I could spend a weekend and figure out what we're going to do for the next year, write it out and communicate it. So you can actually accomplish a lot.
If you're the owner, if you are
as the product owner.
Do you have team members who are active in all of these, or does each one of these have their own entity, own team,
all own teams? Yeah, separate teams. Yeah, so there's separate lead developers, QAs. Going back to agile terminology, there's someone called the Scrum Master. That's why these teams function on a regular basis, where my involvement is just figuring out what we're going to do, communicating that, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Gotcha. Wow.
But I do more, of course. I'm like the public face, and I communicate with users and stuff.
And you're at a point where all these brands, all these entities are pretty far along. I mean, what's the most recent one? Is SureCart the most recent one that you guys launched? Because I feel like when we talked last, I think it was SureCart. You were just about to launch it, if I remember right.
Yeah, but SureCart's a bigger product because it's the entire e-commerce platform. So, and a lot of times when you're first release something, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. That's the same with every bit. When you started this podcast, you didn't know what you didn't know. You tried to know everything. I'm sure you know a whole heck of a lot now today than you knew when you started it. You don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah. So with SureCart, we don't know what we don't know. Like now we find, like when we released SureCart, I was like, oh, let's just have it be just a form and all of that, not like this full e-commerce experience. And all people understood was it has to have a shop page with product listings, auto-generated product pages, and all of that. And so we are agile, and we built that. We're going to come out with that in like a month. We're in testing on it now. We built it. But that's an embarrassing example of you don't know what you don't know. You think this is what you're building, but then you release it and you find out that that's not what people actually want. And you might back yourself into a corner you don't want to be backed into, so people understand the traditional WooCommerce experience, and that's what we've adapted SureCart to be able to deliver.
Got it. Yeah, it's fascinating. And still going back, keeping this on topic with like WordPress, No, you're fine. This is great because you're such an interesting case study of having, you're a true entrepreneur, a true business owner, but you also are a content creator and an influencer in a lot of ways. So to manage all this is really interesting. But at the core, it's all still WordPress stuff. Are any of your products other platforms, or is it all still WordPress?
Yeah, so SureWriter is a separate platform. SureTriggers is technically a separate platform, a separate UI, but there's a WordPress connector plugin, and that's the missing component you don't get with the Zapier. They don't really integrate at the WordPress level with everything and all the plugins. But to build out your automations and stuff like that, how it's going to work, you do that on a SaaS platform. But the side benefit of that is all the heavy lifting, all that automation stuff isn't taking resources from your website and slowing your website down. So that's why it makes sense. Gotcha. And SureCart, as you know as well, is it's kind of cloud powered. So you see everything on your site, you do everything on your site, but it's actually coming from our e-commerce engine. This is why it doesn't slow down your website. It doesn't ruin the performance of your site, things like that. And it works with caching. So there is SaaS components.
Yeah. But at the core, the reason this is really interesting with the idea of WordPress is it's like, it tells me that you're still all in on WordPress and still committed to it. You don't see it. It doesn't seem like you're worried, I guess, to put it that way.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I will say, though, that it is more challenging. Like if you are thinking of if someone is thinking of coming up with a WordPress product, it ain't so easy. There is no such thing as build it and they will come, put it out there, just put it listed in the plugin directory. And that's not how this thing works anymore. Like you have to be like, it ain't easy. Like you have to have a marketing team. You have to have a marketing strategy. You have to engage influencers. You have to have a high converting website. There's like so many components now. It's a lot harder. I will say that it's a lot harder. And I'm not saying that to discourage someone from entering the market, but I am saying that because, it does I have no intention of leaving like WordPress. There's growth there. There's users there. There's always people coming to it. It's a humongous market, gigantic, but it ain't as easy as it was before.
It's also cluttered now. Yeah. Even when I got into, I got into WordPress in 2012. That's when I really dipped my toe into it. And it was very, very different. I mean, you could literally make a plugin, and if it was good, it could be on the directory and it would just kind of naturally work its way up. But you're right. Now there's so many options. How have you stood out with all these different brands? Like, I mean, you obviously have a huge YouTube channel. I imagine that's a huge driver, but yeah, how would you say, like, what have you done well, Adam, to stand out as a plugin owner?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that, and there is a degree of biasness in me making this comment, but anyone can come to their own conclusion. I have extremely high standards. This is going to sound like pretentious, right? So like,
you're from California. It's fine.
Yeah. Right? So like, you look at Apple products, right? There's such a high standard when it comes to the fit, the finish, the experience, like every aspect of it, how it feels in your hand, how the interaction is, the speed when you swipe from left to right and you scroll from up and down, like every single aspect is considered. That's that same way of looking at things that I bring that is into the products that we build. So for example, like, I'm going to, when we have the pre-release, I'm going to send you a copy of CardFlow so you could just see the user interface, and you're going to say, this is the most amazing user interface I've ever experienced in a WordPress product. You will say this when you see this. And it's because it matters to me how easy something is to use. It matters to me the experience of it, as well as it doing what it's there to do. So obviously anyone can make something that will do what it's there to do. But I care about how easy it is to get it to do the thing, and how it feels working with it to do the thing.
So it sounds like WordPress Automatic should have hired you when they came up with Gutenberg to make sure it works well for everybody.
I've made that comment. That's why I was saying I don't think they have a product owner that I do feel like they're making changes. So they hired a couple people recently that I do think have the potential to make that change happen. But see, I don't know with the hierarchy of things if their perspectives will be actually implemented.
Gotcha.
So that's why I think my product, and I'm doing new and big things, right, that no one else is doing. So SureCart, no one's doing that, and it'd be extremely hard to pull off. It takes millions of dollars. It takes millions of dollars of risk to be able to pull this thing off. We're pulling it off. We're about to have 6,000 merchants by the end of the week, which is a big deal. It ain't so easy.
When they're paid too, right? Are those free accounts as well, or are those all paid?
I wish they were all paid, but no, they're not all paid. They're people that are, or as we call them, merchants that are using SureCart on their website. But there's lots of there's lots of ways with e-commerce to monetize the free user base. So with e-commerce, it's actually, most people don't even realize this. Any e-commerce tool you use, say you connect it to your Stripe account, well, Stripe gives kickbacks based upon processing volume. So if
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's every tool, right? So for example, let's just take WooCommerce. WooCommerce said in 2020 they had $20 billion in processing in WooCommerce websites. Say 5 billion of that or 10 billion of that was Stripe. They're made millions and tens of millions of dollars from Stripe, and the users don't pay for it. It's just part of the agreement. That's how the payment processors encourage you to integrate their payment platforms, so that 2.9% goes someplace.
Yeah, good call. Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Crumbs from the table. I'll tell you, it's crumbs, right? So when I was young, someone said, I wish I could add a 1 penny tax to everyone's electric bill. I would be so rich. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
Without adding the tax. If that makes sense. So
yeah, no, it totally does. It also, I mean, the thing is, I would imagine as a product owner, what you learned, like when you came up with cart flows, I would imagine translated to the next project. You refine all those processes, then you go to the next. And so I would imagine, like when you came up with Sure Triggers, I'm not going to say it was a breeze, but I would imagine that was way more seamless than the first time you launched a product. I mean, that's how I've experienced courses. It's like the first time I created a course, I was just fumbling my way through it. It ended up being really good, great results. But the last time I did a course, it was like a well-oiled machine when I got that sucker out. So
exactly. You build upon things, so that's actually what I'm excited about this next version of Cart Flows. Everything I've learned from the first version of Cart Flows, I don't mean it like in the wrong way. If someone's listening to this and uses Cart Flows, don't take this the wrong way, but everything we did wrong in Cart Flows is getting fixed in version 2. This isn't like we did something the wrong way. It wasn't that. But you learn how to make things easy for someone.
Yeah, you innovate, make things better. I mean, I think this is one thing I just talked about. I just this week recorded a video on how to pick the right website builder for you. And my 3 quick tips are: you got to look at the tool itself to make sure you enjoy it and you like it. You got to look at the community behind it, and then the company. And what is the company doing? Like, are they innovating? Are they forward thinking? Are they making it better? Or is it just something they kicked out that's stagnant and it's clear that, they want to sell and just get out of the industry? So those are all really important things to consider. But yeah, when it comes to, it's the reason this is interesting, I think, in the way of WordPress is it's like, I think if I were to see you, Adam, do like Webflow tutorials and do Webflow products, I'd be like, oh, okay, something's going on with WordPress. Or maybe you feel like there's a need to diversify. And there's a lot of people right now who are doing this, who are getting outside of WordPress, or in the case, big time in the case of Divi, I've seen so many prominent Divi creators go like just wider WordPress due to just the different market share stuff that's going on with builders, page builders. I don't know where Divi is right now. Same thing. Like, I don't quite know what stat to look at. I think it's still the top builder, but Elementor's, if they're not second or above, they're probably very close. Oxygen's picking up steam, Bricks, quite a few
I'll
other
builders. I'll tell you what it is. It's Elementor by far is the biggest dog. They've got, I think it's like 13 million websites being powered by it. 8% of the web, when they say the 40 whatever percent of WordPress, well, if you do the math, 8% of the web is Elementor.
As a whole? Or
as a whole, not 8% of WordPress websites. 8% of websites are using Elementor. Just to give you an idea of how much. So I think it's like like 18% of WordPress websites are using Elementor. Elementor is by far and above the big dog.
Oh, there. I see. So you can look at the percentage of a builder with WordPress and then just factor that in with the percentage of WordPress as a whole.
Yes,
And where
8%.
so great segue question, because I wanted to find out from you, Adam, like where do you get your stats? I know we kind of touched on this earlier, but like what news outlets do you
You know,
look at news, or do you just, is it like me and you just come across it?
yeah. Well, you know what's funny? It's like when you think about it, like who comes up with these numbers? Like you kind of have learned to kind of question. Well, some people have learned to maybe question stats and data, like, well, where are they coming up with that information? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you try to find out the source. Well, I am, you would be surprised. There's a lot of information on Twitter, and that refers to stuff that's being published on the web. So it's not like some rando on Twitter saying these things. It's not that. It's there, but then it leads to someplace. So that's how you will come into first contact with information, and then you check. And then, like, because when I heard that 8% of websites are using Elementor, I was like, no, that doesn't sound right.
I was just going to ask where you got that. Okay.
I dug. I forget where it was. It could have also been that W3 Techs or whatever that did that. I don't think it was built with. I think it was W3 Techs. So it took down like. So it said the WordPress is makeup of all websites, and then for WordPress itself, it did the breakdown of builders, and it showed the percentage of WordPress sites that are using Elementor. So then when you do the reverse math, you come up with that 8%. So it probably said like 16 or 18% of WordPress sites are using Elementor. And then you do the backwards math. But they also mention Divi's market share, Oxygen. Elementor by far and above is greater than all. It's the block editors the greatest, then Elementor, and then I believe Divi comes next, but I don't think Divi Elementor ate Divi's lunch, in other words, right?
Yeah. Probably just over the past 3 years, maybe around COVID time. I don't know that. I think it started
I think it flipped in like late 2018, early 2019. It flipped that like the numbers were like way in Elementor's favor, like, but it's hard because like Divi doesn't disclose their numbers. Although, I kind of get the impression that Divi's not doing great. This is probably more of a pundit, not fair of me to say. I would think that they're getting harmed by the block editor. They're getting crowded out.
I think what Divi has, I do think they've definitely plateaued from my insight and just a pulse on the community and everything. But it's not that Divi has. It's not like Divi's facing something where like they're having issues or anything like that. They're actually making it way better. Like they're just about to come out with Divi 5.0, which is not flashy, but it's going to be very, very streamlined with the foundation of it. However, it does seem like people getting into the WordPress market now looking for a builder. It does seem like there's just so many more options. And Elementor may even probably be a little more user-friendly for those just getting started. So I said to say, I think Divi has done a good job at keeping their core in most cases. But there's a lot more competition. And Elementor, is that far ahead, then that makes sense as to why I've kind of seen it plateau a little bit.
I think it's like Divi for life, right? If you're a Divi user, you're like Divi for life. Same thing with Beaver Builder. Those folks are Beaver for life.
I mean, and it comes down to like, well, it would take a lot for me to stray away from Divi. And a lot of it is because like, I don't know too much about the company behind Elementor. Are they funded? What is their goal? Like the one reason I really have enjoyed Divi is because I've met Nick, the owner, multiple times, and he's like the coolest dude ever. And he's a great guy. Like they have a very organic, real community minded approach. And I've always appreciated that because the worst thing that can happen is to dive into a company that you just don't know what their motives are. And if they get sold, who knows what's going to happen to that product? We've seen that left and right where a plugin or a platform gets sold and then it just goes to crap after that. So I'm very leery of that. Now, that said, my favorite new platform, which is what I use for my membership, is Circle, which I use for Circle is incredible. I use it for community, and my courses are on there now too with my program Web Designer Pro and coaching. It gives me the option to do all that inside of Circle. It's really incredible. Now they are funded. They got like a $24 million grant, I think 2 years ago or something. And like they're very open about it. They're not like, hey, they're not being secretive. Like they have a public roadmap. They disclose everything, which I appreciate. So all that to say, we can put a quick, note on this idea. It's like, look at the company behind the tool, because it's so important to make sure you feel comfortable with the company or the owner, like you said.
Yeah, I'll say this.
I don't know. Do you disagree? Do you disagree with that, or do you?
No, I totally agree with this. I think one of the things I've been a little disappointed with Divi as a company is how they've operated their content marketing strategy. It used to be really good when Nathan was there. I don't know if Nathan's still there, but it's changed.
He's not. I didn't know. Actually, it's funny. The one thing about the content marketing stuff over the past couple of years, I do agree. I've seen a big shift in that. It went from very community led, because I was a content contributor to their blog. That's how I got my start in this world, as I did tutorials. And then Nathan also, I don't know if he still lives in Columbus, but he did. I found out that he lived in Columbus. So I invited him out to coffee and just shared what I was up to. And he was like, dude, you have a really cool story. Would you like to contribute to the blog? And I was like, oh, that'd be amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, me being an Elegant Themes blog author is how I got a lot of notoriety in the WordPress and Divi realm. But I say that to say, like, it was very different back in 2016 when I got started doing that. It does seem like it's got a little more, I don't want to say corporate, but I know by talking to one of their previous writers that they stopped doing like freelance writers and community input stuff, and it all went in-house. And it seems very cookie cutter. The content seems very cookie cutter now.
It's gone all list posts with referral links, with poor research. It's really, I would be kind of embarrassed, to be honest, if I ran that blog or had anything to do with their content marketing strategy. I would just be embarrassed because it's gotten like pathetic, to be honest. Sorry, I'm using strong language. I might regret this later.
I'm not. I mean, I use Divi. I love, Elegant Themes and stuff, but yeah, I mean, there's issues we can talk. That's the beauty about us. That's the beauty about like me not working for Elegant Themes and you not working for WordPress. We can share our honest thoughts and opinions and experience on this. So no, I want to hear, like, this is why I wanted to talk with you. I want to hear, like we would have this conversation if we weren't, recording, and that's what I think people want to hear. And like, that's what I want to know. Like, what do you really feel? So yeah, hit me, man. Like, I agree.
Well, I'll say
every blog post I get from Elegant Themes is like top 10 website builders or like Wix versus Webflow. And I'm like, really? Like,
that started this year. That was not prior to this year.
Yeah.
It's just the same top 10 list from something else. But before, when Nathan was there, not that I think they should have done this, they had a no referral link position. Like, we're not going to use referral links. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
Now,
when I did my blogs, that was a biggie. They were like, absolutely no referral links. Like, you can mention your site, but it's no follow in the HTML. It is like, no referral links, no affiliate links, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's not the case anymore, so it's gone from, like you said, community driven and all of that to top 10 this, top 10 that. And it's the same top 10 list from like 100 other websites just using referral links. So that's why I find it kind of sad. I didn't mean to use harsh language. I love all the people there. I just think it's sad. Like, the respectability has gone down in my eyes, just in that regard. I love what they're doing with Divi 5. I think it's great. And I think I'm happy for all the users too, that they're doing that. I do think they're insane to maintain backwards compatibility. I think it's going to be very hard. But they know what they're doing, but backwards compatibility is a pain in the rear end for software development. It makes something take 3 or 4 times as long and have 3 or 4 times the complexity to maintain backwards compatibility. But I respect them for their stance on that. And they're a very principle driven company. I just this one tiny area, I kind of feel like, oh, this is a sad thing.
Well, what is, I think it's worthwhile kind of not picking on it, but really exploring it. And that is, first of all, they probably need to know, like, I don't know how they're measuring metrics on comments or engagement or whatever it is, but they probably need a little more outsider feedback on the content. I mean, their blog at the heyday of when I was fortunate to write for them. And I mean, it was like, I would do a blog post and there would be hundreds of comments. Like, it was just huge and really engaging, really thoughtful people, questions.
Yes.
So it tells me, like, it seems like, and maybe this is just a good rule of thumb to keep an eye on companies, like their content marketing strategy is likely a telltale sign of like where the company's at with if they're doing a lot of articles like Wix versus WordPress or whatever it is, then it's likely they're probably trying to get a lot of new people. Versus,
yes.
Versus maybe some other content that's like diving further into what you can do with the product, which seems like it's missing maybe completely from the Divi content right now.
Yeah, I just hope they continue with like the Divi community stuff that they've done. They've always been participating in different WordCamp events and like inviting anyone that wants to join. And it's anyways. That's just the one thing there. And it could have just be because maybe Nathan's not there anymore. Nathan, you met him, great guy. They're all really great guys there. It's just sad and kind of disappointing what they've transitioned to there, but
it definitely makes sense. Yeah. Randy Brown, who was one of their consistent freelance writers. I mentioned to him, I think just recently, maybe last month, that I said, like, I haven't seen you on the blog much and more Facebook friends. And he's like, yeah, they went all in house with their writing. And he's like, since Nathan's gone, I was like, that makes sense as to the difference with the blog and all that. So, and we're not picking on Divi, but it is, this just goes to show you that people are looking at your online marketing and they are looking at your stuff.
Let's tie it back to like the audience here, right? People are paying attention, people do pay attention and they're drawing conclusions based upon what they are paying attention to.
Right. Yeah. Oh, listen, that's a good point right there, Adam.
Isn't that the tough part about having a blog on your site, right? Like, I'm sure if you're building a website for someone, do they have a blog or not? If they do, it needs a constant stream of like really good, helpful content that someone wants, or it can give a bad perception.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that. Last year, I unwillingly went into the accessibility realm just because I don't know. I feel much better about some basic understanding now, but last year I really didn't know anything about accessibility. Yeah. And because of that, I'm quite ignorant with the tools and all the options. So I just contacted Accessibility. I know them to be like an overlay solution. So I talked with one of their guys and he was super nice, made a lot of sense, posted a YouTube video, a podcast about it. And I got blasted by people.
I was waiting for it. I didn't know, but I know about them.
I did a live Q&A last year with one of the guys from Accessibility and a blind user who actually does appreciate Accessibility. And I read this email to them that this guy sent me. He was a disabled person who basically said that I'm known in the industry as somebody who's a fraud and getting into just publishing anyone for $1 and having affiliate links left and right. And the thing was, at the same time, I also talked with Colleen Gratzer, who's one of my colleagues from, she has a company called Creative Boost, and she is a accessibility developer, code up. So no overlay solution, ground up kind of situation. So I talked with her too. So I got both sides of the accessibility realm, but man, is that one polarized segment of the market. So I say that to say even just being ignorant and just trying to know, basically what this podcast is I'm learning and I'm just publishing what I'm learning. I mean, that's really what this podcast is. I'm getting insight from people and sharing the insight that I have. But that means I'm going to, dive into things that maybe I don't know much about. Maybe they're not even best practices, but by golly, did I get shredded by some people when I did the accessibility stuff.
Well, I know what it feels like to have someone say something about you that is not true. And everyone that knows you knows is not true. When you mentioned that company, I'm like, because I looked them up because they were very reaching out to people, which is their job, right? When you have a company, you need to reach out to people to share about your solution. But then I had Googled it and I saw like some lawsuits against them and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to stay away from this one. But that's a tough topic, accessibility.
But that was after, maybe so there was some of that going on. But I actually think, I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure I reached out, somebody I knew used it. Oh, well, Eric, the CEO of my agency, uses it. And he's I think he's almost completely blind. He has a lot of vision issues and it's really helped him. So it is one of those things. And like I said, I had a blind entrepreneur who it really helps him. So it's yes, I think there's a lot going on like that, but there's also something about the accessibility world. I don't want to hang on this too much, but there is a lot of lawsuits on either side. It is a lawsuit heavy segment of the industry. And I don't know, I'm sure a lot of that is warranted because I do think everyone there should be a wheelchair ramp to every website, for lack of a better term. That is the best way I've known accessibility to be. You want to make sure everybody can get in and use it. But I do think there's a lot of snakes in the industry who are poking at both sides, or poking is probably not right. Snakes don't poke. I guess they get hit with their head. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of shiftiness going on in that world and that industry of the market.
See, the problem with it, I think, is the lawsuits started dropping down because some laws changed in different countries, here in the United States specifically, right? So once the lawsuits come together, start coming, it's oh my gosh, I need some solution. I need it now. I cannot get sued. So then you have these companies saying, we'll make the one-click solution for you. But it's a bigger problem. But as an entrepreneur, you have to solve this problem whichever way possible now, because you don't want to get sued. You do care about someone's accessibility to your content or to your website, but you have to solve this problem any way possible. So if that means a normal,
and you may not be able to have spend $10,000 for an advanced developer to get through the code line by line.
Exactly. So if you have a beautiful, every aspect of your website's beautiful, but there's some accessibility issues, accessibility gives you a one-click thing, but now this beautiful website is just this one little, one single page text only. Right. You have to do what you have to do because the lawsuits are forcing you to do that. You have to make that decision. But, I personally, I have, and I don't actually want to get destroyed in the comment section. My views on accessibility is I wish it was a problem that web browsers could solve, not the website creator, because it vastly limits what you can do with your website if you're going to make it fully accessible, every aspect of it. And so it's
well, long and short of it is I don't use it right now. I'm not using it. I try to make things basic, accessibility.
You have to make it basic, right?
Yeah. I stopped doing a lot of animations, which are a big culprit when it comes to accessibility. And what's interesting about this is these are the kind of things that do affect WordPress and all the builders and all the tools. For every challenge that a designer has, a product creator, I'm sure you've experienced this, Adam, it's 10 times worse because you now have to adjust your product. You have to roll it out to everybody, make sure it's compatible. So, I'm sure anyone has insight on keeping up with accessibility and privacy and terms and all the things that affect anything online now as a product creator.
Especially accessibility with the e-commerce. E-commerce has forms and forms have accessibility challenges at times. So it's I was talking to our lead developer with Shortcut, and I'm I don't like how everything's so big. You know what I mean? It makes the form all bigger and all. Well, it's big for accessibility purposes. You know, we need to have the font be like 16 point pixels. I wanted 14, you know, but we have to do it this other way for accessibility. So, you know, it just impacts, everything. But, you know, we all want to be inclusive. We want everyone invited to the party. You know, everyone's equal. Everyone has a seat at the table type of thing, which, you know, we do feel. But anyways, that's a whole subtopic. But at least I kind of wish people felt the urgency to make their stuff accessible, but it wasn't because of lawsuits. That's just where I feel.
Yeah. It does seem like that's what kicked it off for sure. I mean, honestly, it was just plain ignorance. Like for years, I honestly didn't even think about it. Like I didn't think about somebody who had vision problems using my content stuff, but like, duh, of course. I mean, I have a daughter who has a lot of special needs, and I think about her being in an online world, like can things work for her well? So that is one bright spot. I mean, despite, and not even just accessibility, but despite all of the complexities with the online world and website world now, a lot of it is driven to help people, which I think is a really good thing. Does it make web designers' lives a lot more complicated? Sure. But with things like Chat GPT and all these other solutions, like there are a lot of like automated stuff that seems to be taking care of a lot of the complexities for the most part. Anyway, I don't know. It's just some 2 cents on that.
You know, it's actually, let me wrap up the accessibility part of this up by saying, I think that is part of what makes WordPress take a lot longer to build things, because they do have on the forefront of their mind the accessibility. So they're thinking, how can the block editor, it's not how, the block editor must be fully accessible to everyone, where if you're Elementor or Divi, those things sure as heck are not accessible from the editing side. So I'm not talking about the front end, I'm talking about the editor, like actually using it.
Yeah, like a visual builder, how it interacts with the browser. Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. That could be very different.
So if I'm blind and I need to use WordPress to create a website, WordPress has got that on their mind. You know what I mean? With the block editor. Elementor don't got that on their mind, and none of them do. But WordPress does. So there's this consideration of things like that, I'm certain of, because when you see their updates they might release, we improved the accessibility of this. They're talking about the back end, not the front end.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's just to tie the earlier part of the conversation of WordPress has different things they have to consider. This is all speculation, but I bet it's accurate.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Wow. Well, Adam, this has been fun, man. This has been great. This has been I mean, I knew we were getting into some fun stuff. Yeah, we've got some great resources. We're going to have a ton of links. I'll make sure we link up to the w3tex.com. I was just checking that out. That definitely looks to have probably, if not the most up-to-date, maybe the most trusted source for some of the numbers when it comes to percentages and stuff. So I'm going to have fun with that. I got to bookmark that bad boy. Are there any other tools or resources that you would recommend for people to keep up to date? And then I got a final question for you as we wrap this up.
Well,
other than WP Crafter, of course.
I was going to say, you should certainly follow my channel. I also have a Facebook group. You might want to join in that too.
Yeah.
And, I like to share breaking information and stuff like that as well. And I'd love to invite anyone to try any of our tools. We have the most generous tools that, from a free perspective. SureTriggers is like 10 times better than Zapier from a cost perspective. We give you 10 times more for free, in other words. And check out SureWriter when we release that here in like a week. Like literally, it's like Jasper, but you use your own OpenAI key.
Well, by the time that this interview comes out, I'm about
it'll be out.
To tweet out on interview, so yeah, it should be out by then. And then we'll have all this linked up. Do you have a favorite trusted source for WordPress news or content? Like, do you like the WordPress blog? Is there like a place
you know what? I get it directly from I'm like old school, right? I have like a Feedly account. Have you heard of Feedly? If you have
No.
never heard of so Feedly, it's a free service where you can say whenever there's a blog post on this website, I want to see it in my Feedly list. So I've got everybody in my Feedly, right? So I've got WordPress, Elementor, I've got Divi. That's why I see these things. I'm not going to their website to check. I just look at my Feedly each day. And I
now,
like
does that pull in, like if I write something on Divi, would that pull that in? Or does that take like domain authority trusted?
Yeah, no, basically what Feedly is it's pulling in like websites RSS feeds. You can put YouTube channels on there. So if a YouTube channel, you don't want to subscribe, you want to see it in your Feedly, you can do that. I love Feedly, but I think it's kind of a relic of like Web 1.0. It used to be called Google Reader, then they got rid of that service, and then it's Feedly. It's completely free.
Kind of a curation of
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just go there, and anything any company publishes ends up there. So usually a company will announce something on their blog, right? And so as soon as they click on publish, it'll show up in Feedly. You know, it's actually funny. Sometimes people and I'm sure everyone's done it. You click publish and you're like, oh, let me unpublish that. It'll still show. It'll still show in Feedly.
Gotcha.
If you click on publish, it's going to end up there. Even if you unpublish it, I'm going to be able to see it there. So I've caught companies before that have not caught, right? But like they're the big announcement, they accidentally clicked on publish and then they unpublished, but it's in Feedly.
Fair. It's indexed. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great resource, man. I wasn't aware of that. So we'll link that too. Yeah. A ton of links we'll have in this one. So I recommend everyone go to the show notes. Definitely recommend, if you haven't already followed your YouTube channel, WP Crafter, we'll have all the products linked for the WordPress stuff. Last question for you, Adam. Where do you think WordPress is going to be in a few years?
Gotcha.
Yeah, where do you think it'll be? And take this however you want. But yeah, what's ahead in a few years?
So I'll say this. I think that people should experience, just for trying purposes, the new site editor. So you have to use a block-based theme for that. And then you can experience the site editor. It's a lot like SquareSpace. And when I go in there, I'm like, this is what WordPress is going to be in a couple years. The interface, the experience. So that's all that it's going to be. It's not going to be you go there and it says posts and pages and tools. It's going to have the UI of the site editor. And that is speculation, but I would bet that it's pretty accurate speculation. So that there's like a new, fresh, easier to navigate experience inside of WordPress. That's certainly coming.
Is that different than Gutenberg, by the way? Or is that
it is different than that, but when you actually then click to edit a page, you're in the block editor. So you have to try it. It's beautiful experience. It's real time. It's quite nice. So I would. I'm certain of it, but it's speculation that's what the UI of WordPress will have to become in a couple of years to stay competitive, just to make it easier. So there's that. And the other thing is that I think creating websites is kind of like there's a mundane side to it, and a lot of the mundane sides to it are going to be completely automated with AI. By the time this podcast episode's out, if you hop on my channel, I'm sure we'll have it out. It's a full WordPress website creation platform where you would just go there, pop in the info, and it spits out the site with the images, the text, everything, the design, all of that. You might need to make a tweak here or there. But this is going to be everywhere. It's not like me There's multiple companies already building this. Every aspect of WordPress is going to be AI-ified, whatever that means. The image creation, the content creation, maybe making custom components for your sites. Divi, guaranteed, I would think Divi themselves are working on AI. I don't know for sure, but they would be foolish not to.
I would think so.
You would think so, absolutely.
Capacity. Yeah. I mean, even like Loom, I use Loom every day for videos to send to students and team members and stuff. And like, yeah, their AI title thing is really cool. I don't know if you've seen that, but you could record a Loom video and then AI will just make a recommended title for you. And a couple of them, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. That's exactly what, yep. I don't even think about a title. So I do like AI as I'm excited about it as a helper to web designers, and particularly like coding. My gosh, what AI is so underutilized, if you haven't already, for like coding issues and stuff, because you can just say like, hey, what's wrong with the code, or write me this CSS effect, and boom, it just kicks it out. So yeah, there's some cool stuff ahead.
Yep, that's coming to every area of our lives, every single area of our lives, especially with WordPress. Well, we're going to probably also build a ChatGPT plugin. I'm looking forward to that. So you can say, oh, make me a website in ChatGPT, and boom, it'll just go and make you the website on our platform.
I'm going to go register suregpt.com.
Yeah, sure.
Adam has to pay me to buy the domain name.
You can't do that. OpenAI has a trademark. They filed on GPT. So all the people that got domains that say GPT, guaranteed they're all going to get shut down. All of them are going to be forced to change their name. This I saw because I have Feedly, and I got the feed that says they filed a trademark last December for GPT, and it's going to be bad. It's like Woo. Anyone that has a product has a domain name with the word Woo in it, WooCommerce owns it, and they're making people change their business names. They've been doing it for the last 12 months. So any product that you know that said, oh, we're rebranding, they didn't rebrand they got told they had to.
Does that apply to just courses? Because one of my courses is a Divi / WooCommerce course. It's a beginner's course, but.
Well, I mean,
but that's different. I'm promoting WooCommerce though. Yeah,
exactly.
Why would they want to shut that down? I'm like, I'm a benefit.
Yeah, it's not named WooCourses.com. You know what I mean? That makes it seem like it's their product, but it's your product.
So now are they going to contact Ric Flair and make him take down Woo?
I know. Huh?
All right, easy dad joke to end this convo off. There it is. No, that was great though. Yeah, this has been a blast. I love talking shop with you. Appreciate your insight. I'm glad you got a kick out of that one, fellow dad.
I did.
Hello, Dad, like that one. But man, yeah, I think with you having all these products too, you got to stay on the up and up with WordPress. So I think this is going to really benefit a lot of folks. And look, the reality is there's a lot of awesome things up ahead, but there's a lot of things to keep an eye on. And some stuff we've addressed here. So Adam, thank you so much for your time, man. We spent an hour and a half together, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure this won't be the last time. We'll probably do a round 3 when AI takes over everything.
And it'll just be an AI version of me and you.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. All that WordPress goodness. Again, want to say a big thanks to Adam for coming back onto the podcast. And I have to say too, this is off the record, but Adam was just down to chat business after we stopped recording. And I really, really appreciate his insight. And I mean, he's somebody who is at the top level when it comes to building content and having a thriving YouTube channel and being the owner of a lot of really, really, I mean, top notch is the best way to describe the tools that he's created over the years and his teams have created between SureCart, SureTriggers, SureWriter, a lot of Sure brands. Presto Player is an awesome tool, and then CartFlows for e-commerce checkouts. I mean, my goodness. And a lot of cool resources. Just a reminder, w3text.com for stats, and then feedly.com is one of my new favorite tools after talking with Adam for the latest. So a lot of great stuff in this one. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Again, go to wpcrafter.com to connect with Adam. And again, if you have not subscribed to his YouTube channel, let's do it. Let's get him over 250,000 here soon. And again, thanks to Adam for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed this. Hope it makes you either feel better about where WordPress is, or if you're not in WordPress, I hope this gave you a good understanding of where WordPress is in the market. And hopefully a lot of these things help you with the right tools for you and your business. So cheers to that, friends. Cheers to the right tools for your business. I hope I can be a resource for you, just like Adam has. Go to the show notes for this episode for all the links we talked about, joshhall.co/264. So I'll see you over there now, or when you're done mowing the lawn or done driving. How's that sound? Don't look at that link while you're driving. See you on the next one.